Names, aren't they great? They can be good and bad. Anybody who's ever been a parent knows the stress, the worry, the thought, everything that goes into picking out a name for that child that they're going to have for the rest of their life. Anybody else struggle with that? What that was going to be like? Yes, right? So, being a labor and delivery nurse for 25 years, I heard a lot of names. A lot of names people just made up. And you're like, huh, or spelled weird ways or whatever. But one of the ones that's the most memorable, about 30 years ago, before tattoos and piercings and all of those things were as common as they are today, I had this hardcore biker mom and dad come in to deliver, and she was delivering twins. So they've got all these piercings, tattoos, the dad comes in all of his leather, the chains, the hat, you know what I'm talking about, right? And even pregnant, the mom came in wearing leather pants. I'm thinking, that had to be hard to get into those. Hope we're gonna be able to get them off. And so we're talking. They're having a boy and a girl. They know they're having a boy and a girl. Have you decided on any names yet? Yes, we're so excited. And I said, that's great. What are they gonna be? Well, the little girl's name was Heather. That's awesome. What do you think the little boy's name was? Leather. Heather and Leather. Isn't that cute? I'm thinking right away, ooh, we need to sign that child up for counseling now. Yeah, that's what she named him, his whole life. I always wonder whatever happened to Leather. I'm gonna hope maybe he grew up and didn't want to be a biker, or I don't know, whatever. But no, that was his actual name on the birth certificate. So when it came time for us to have children, my husband is terrible to pick out a name with. First of all, what can it rhyme with? Well, you can't have this because it might rhyme with that, or it might rhyme with that, and then they're gonna say that. You pick a name, oh, nope, I knew a girl with that name, and she threw up on the desk in 2nd grade, and nobody ever remembered anything about her except that. Even when she's graduating from high school, they go, oh, remember when she threw up on the desk in 2nd grade? So you know how that is, you've known somebody with a name, right? And then the worst one was when we knew we were having a girl with Katie, we would pick out names, and he would go, oh, that's a really cute name. What if they're not cute? Like, are you kidding me? But we named her Katie anyway, and she's cute, so anyway. So we all go through all of these different things, right? We choose names for our animals, our boats, our friends. Everything has to have a name. And we also know that names carry all kinds of stigmas with them. The most asked question for me in the last 2 years has been, what's your granddaughter gonna call you? I don't know. Whatever she wants. Whatever it is. So, names carry a lot of weight. I would like you to turn to the person next to you, behind you, in front of you, and share a name or a nickname that you've been called and how it made you feel. Go ahead. Okay, so clearly there's some names that have been shared here. Who's brave enough to share? Who's brave enough to share one? You are? And? What did that mean? Is it good, bad? You didn't care? Why did they call you Daniel?
No clue.
Because that's not your name. Not your name. What's your name?
Danford.
They sound the same. Yeah, no. Who else? Who wants to share? Come on, somebody, be brave. Huh? Vivian.
My nickname is Mina.
Where did that come from?
For my nephew, I'm his godmother, and in Spanish, godmother is madrina, and he couldn't say madrina, so I became Mina.
Oh. See, those are the kinds of names they come up with on their own. That's sweet. Somebody else? Sherry?
My dad always calls me Pumpkin. And I just love it. Even to this day, 50 whatever years old, I'm still Pumpkin.
Oh, that's sweet. Anybody else? One more? Somebody, come on. We've all had those names we've been called or nicknames. Oh, I'm going to go to Zach, Hannah. I can't wait to hear this one. Either.
Well, my dad was going to call me Stone or Major. And
Your mom won.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And my real name's Zachary, and people call me Zach. So
Is that okay?
that's totally fine.
Okay, good. So we all have them, and we have those childhood names too, right? So my dad always called me Jeanne the Bean. And now a lot of the kids do too, and not because I told them that, obviously it rhymes. Our youngest daughter, Kelly, we thought, okay, that's gonna be fine, there won't be a lot of things to rhyme with it, right? She's about 1.5 years, and her brother, Kevin, was like 8 then. Smelly Kelly. Stuck with her forever. So feel free, guys, when you see her. Yeah, there you go. So, in today's scripture, Moses was preparing to go before Pharaoh to lead the Israelites out of Egypt, and he wanted to be able to tell them the name of this God he was going to meet. And Moses said to God, "Behold, I am going to the sons of Israel, and I shall say to them, the God of your fathers has sent me to you. Now they may say to me, what is his name? What shall I say to them?" And God told him to say, "I am who I am." And he said, "Thus you shall say to the sons of Israel, I am was sent to you." When asked the question, "What is your name?" God says to Moses, "Just tell them, I am has sent me." God first gave Moses a name that he could say or speak, because we want to be able to call someone by name. And furthermore, God said to Moses, "Thus you shall also say to the sons of Israel, Yahweh, YHWH, the God of Abraham, the God of Isaac, and the God of Jacob, has sent me unto you." Names hold a lot of power. They can be a single word, they can be a string of words, and they're usually used to express a characteristic or a description of a person or thing, oftentimes associated with approval or disapproval. Likewise, by not calling someone by name, we ignore them, we dismiss them, we say they're not important. And we all know that it's not just what you say, but it's how you say it. "Sherry, you look great today." "Sherry, you look great today." It's all how you say it, right? The exact same words can come across, but you do look really great. And we've all heard that childish rhyme, "Sticks and stones, but..." Not true. Not true. Bones heal. Those physical, emotional wounds inflicted by names. No. Mean, loud, fat, lazy, stupid, irresponsible, dumb, ugly, boring, disgusting, rude, whore, loser, awful, embarrassing, waste of space, useless, druggy, wish you'd never been born. How many of you have ever said or had someone say any of these words to you? They hurt. They're not just words. As I headed off on 3 different mission trips with youth and young adults from the church, I was so incredibly proud of how they reacted to and interacted with people whose society often labels a lot of those very words. Our first night in Hollywood with the senior high kids in WAVE, when we got there and got our orientation from the people we were going to be working with telling us about the agencies and things, the most important thing we learned that night was about names. They told us that these were not homeless people. These were not people living on the streets. These were people. People just like you and me, only without a home. They said, we call them our homeless friends. Friends, wow, what a powerful statement. Friends are people you sit with and talk to. Friends are people you share things with. Friends are people that you reach out and help when they're hurting. People who are down on their luck. People who you sit and listen to their stories. And so we began calling them too our homeless friends. I would highly recommend reading the book Same Kind of Different as Me. It's written by a gentleman who was homeless. I read it several years ago, and one of the most powerful things I learned from that book was the power of looking somebody in the eye and asking them their name. So now, when I stop to help someone or talk to them, whatever, I always put my hand out and say, hi, my name's Jeanne, what's your name? And I can't tell you the number of people who've had tears in their eyes. And the one that stands out in my mind the most was a gentleman at Panera at Tyrone. He was sitting on the curb outside Panera by Joanne Fabrics there. And I went up and I sat down next to him and said, hi, my name's Jeanne, what's your name? And the next thing I know, he has tears streaming down his cheeks. And I said, what's the matter? And he said, it's been years since anybody asked me my name. Wow, can you imagine? And so, our senior high youth spent the time on the streets, in local agencies, in shelters, talking to our homeless friends, asking questions, serving them meals, sharing their lunches, passing out bags of food at food banks, giving away their own clothes and shoes, cleaning a laundromat where they were allowed to come in one evening a week and wash their clothes for free, praying with and for them. All of these people who were so different and so yet just like us. All of these friends have names, just like us. No one grows up and says, hey, I think I want to grow up and be homeless. We learned that while many of our friends had mental health or substance abuse issues, over half of them were people who had lost jobs, couldn't afford housing, had become ill, couldn't pay the bills, etc. We learned that in the Los Angeles area, a studio apartment goes for about $2,000 a month rent. Wow. That's crazy. And gas was over $4 a gallon while we were there. It's crazy. How many of us or someone you know are only a paycheck or two away from having to change your living situation? They estimate that on any given night in Los Angeles, there are between 45 and 50,000 people sleeping on the streets. Can you believe that? They're everywhere. Tents are everywhere. People are everywhere. So, seeing and talking to them is great and wonderful, and it opens up their eyes, and they got to firsthand go out and see what that looks like. You know, you start trying to figure out, well, where do they go to the bathroom? Where do they shower? All of these things, right? But they were in for a little surprise on the third night. Adriana alluded to it. I had done this trip 5 years ago, so I knew what was in store. But one of the options that they give the youth leader is to challenge the kids to do a task. They said a lot of people don't do it, and I don't know why you wouldn't do it, because I think It's part of the whole experience. It's very valuable. So typically for dinner, the kids fix dinner. We help with whoever's at the church we're staying at, and they prepare meals, and then we take turns serving, cleaning up, and doing all of that. So at dinner that night, it's time for dinner. I said, you need to be on time. You've got to be like on time for dinner tonight. And they get there, and nobody's cooked any dinner, and nothing's set up, and they're kind of looking at us like, okay. So we go into a meeting room instead, and they're told that they have to beg for their dinner that night. They have to hit the streets in groups of 5 kids, 1 adult, and we as an adult stood way back. So it was not, they had no idea an adult was with them as they're out on the streets. And they had 2 hours to go out and find food. How they did that was up to them. They could ask for it, they could work for it, they could get it out of a trash can, whatever they wanted to do. But the rules were simple. 2 hours, you must all eat. Right? You can imagine scared, nervous, appalled. What are we doing? You have to do it. You have to go do this. Okay, well, so they go off in the groups. There's a lot of muttering. A lot of, why are we doing this? Trust me, let's just go do it. Now, I can only speak to my immediate group at this point, and I'm watching them, and the church we were staying at was only a block off of Hollywood Boulevard. So from the church, they could go anywhere. There's a ton of different places to go, and hundreds of people, because, that's the Avenue of the Stars, and so they're not the only ones begging, believe me. And there's hundreds and hundreds of people walking up and down, mostly tourists. So I watch my kids go, and there's 5 in the group, and after a few minutes, I notice that 2 people in the group, 2 young men, aren't participating. They're just kind of walking like this and looking really uncomfortable. Well, the other people in the group start getting annoyed with them because they're having to beg for dinner, and everybody's going to get to eat the dinner, and they say, they're not helping. Why aren't they helping? They need to help us. If we have to do it, they have to do it too. So I pulled the 2 young men aside and said, you have to do this. I don't want to do it. It's wrong. I don't really care. You have to do it. Trust me. I don't want to beg. Well, go into a restaurant, ask if you can wash dishes, find another way to get you don't have to ask for money. Begrudgingly, they did it. They did do it. At the end of almost 2 hours, they had just over $5. And they had to all eat. So, when you don't have much money, where do you go to eat? A convenience store, like a 7-Eleven, right? I'm watching from across the street. They go in, they come out, they have 1 sandwich, a drink, and a bunch of fruit. I'm like, okay, that's good. And one of the young men looks right at me because he knows I'm across the street, and he walks right across the street to a homeless person and gives him food. And I walked over to him, and I looked at him, and I said, you can't do that. You have to eat. And you know what he did? He looked at me, not kidding, put his hand on his hip, stomped his foot. This is the most well-mannered, respectful young man I've ever met. And he says, what are you going to do? Ground me? Right? Now, it was really hard not to laugh, but I'm really good at not laughing when the kids say things, and I said, well, I'm really sorry, but you still have to eat. Those are the rules. So they split 1 sandwich between a bunch of them, they shared 1 drink, and they gave away all the rest of the food. Okay? So they kind of fulfilled, except for this 1 young man. He didn't eat a bite. I don't think you did either, did you? You did? You did eat a little bit? Okay. I was hoping Freddie was going to be here, but Alex was one of the young men who took a stand. So we got back to church, And we're debriefing now with everybody there, and we're hearing everybody's stories. And there's very similar stories, different people. Some people got a lot of money. Some people went actually to a shelter and were fed and went in and got fed a meal. So they got to be on the opposite side of that and see what it's like. And so I encourage you to talk with these kids because they all have incredible experience to share. And at the end of the night, when they were all done, I told them how incredibly proud I was of them. Because you know what? There are times when you stand up for what you believe in and you say no, and that's okay. But what they did learn was how people ignore them, how people make rude remarks to them, tell them to get a job, you're lazy, what are you doing, go to school, walk around you completely, avoid you, won't look at you, on and on and on and on. And they came back realizing it's really hard to get food and money. So was it worth it? Absolutely. Was it uncomfortable? Absolutely. But it's not an experience they'll ever forget. Middle schoolers. Our middle schoolers went to Nashville, and we hit the streets of Nashville, where they also learned many valuable things. One of which is Nashville is the bachelorette capital of the United States. So we saw a lot of sights we weren't really planning on seeing that day as we went downtown into Nashville, and all the streets, I'm not kidding. Has anybody ever gone there in the summer and seen it? It's crazy. Every street must have 3 or 4 bachelorette parties on it. They're all wearing the matching outfits. They've all been drinking. They're riding the cars that you pedal with the beer everywhere. And one group was walking around wearing just little tiny itty bitty bikini tops and thongs. And our boys are like, wow, Nashville's kind of nice. Like, this is not what we came here for, people. But we enjoyed all the other historical things and learned a lot about Nashville as well. You just never know what you're going to encounter. Our youth there spent the week working with different organizations, which Ella talked a little bit about. A lot of us spent time working at a Habitat for Humanity warehouse where everybody donates stuff. It is a massive, think like a Sam's Club warehouse. And our job was to help inventory the things and load them onto pallets and then shrink wrap them. And then they were taken and distributed to, the Habitat for Humanity, what they call Restore, which is like their thrift shops. And so we spent 2 days doing that, and we loaded over 18 pallets. Each pallet, they figure, brings in about $2,000 in sales, which was more than enough to build a room on a house. So in that time that they were there, they did that. Some of them worked, we volunteered and worked at an organization called Souls for Souls, which takes new shoes, old shoes, and recycles them, distributes them to communities in the United States and to 27 other countries. And as a church, we're going to be doing something with that starting in September. Incredible organization. And one group of our kids spent the whole week at a senior home. They were probably the most nervous, because that can be an overwhelming, scary thought if that's not a place you've been, and especially if you have grandparents, which most of them do. But they were amazing. Charlie Loist played the piano every day for him in the nursing home, and I got rave reviews every day. People said they just loved him playing. They played games with him. They did art projects. They did dance lessons. They exercised. And most important, they sat down and they heard their stories. They learned their names and they heard their stories about life. And they had all these new grandparents by the end of the week. And of course, as you can imagine, on the last day, there were a lot of tears shed on both sides as they had to say goodbye and head home. But they made a difference in those lives, and by calling people by name and knowing their story and sharing theirs. So all of our youth worked and played hard. They were all hungry, thirsty, had sore muscles, little sleep, and throughout it all, they didn't complain. They made every task fun, including having to prepare meals, clean bathrooms, empty trash, sleep on hard floors, share bathrooms, and the middle schoolers, we had special treat, didn't I? Our showers. We got to take our showers outside with a hose hooked up to a shower head in a little one-man tent every day. It was very refreshing, wasn't it? Yeah. So, these kids came home changed, excited, inspired, and proud of all that they did. Every evening, we talked about our faith, about serving others who we do and don't know, how God is alive and at work in their lives, and at the end of the week, they were tired, and so was I. But we would all go again tomorrow and do it all over again if we could. These youth are changing not only their lives, but those they interact with by living out the gospel of Jesus Christ. Names are powerful. God told us his name, I am. Use your words and the names you use carefully, lovingly, patiently. The world today is becoming increasingly frightening. This last week has just been awful. We have seen names used in and by people with great power in very destructive ways. Names and labels are tearing us apart. I pray every day that this stops, but prayer isn't enough. As Christians, we need to take a stand. We need to say what is not right. We need to look others in the eye and say, what are you going to do? Ground me? And yes, there might be consequences for doing this. There often are. But I don't know about you. I cannot, at the end of my life, look my God in the eye and say, I did not stand up for the downtrodden, the sick, the hopeless, the poor, the forgotten. So instead, I choose to look people in the eye and say, I see you for the beloved child of God that you are. Will you join me? Amen.